We will have a short session 18 today to conclude the two-port network parameters. The last time we talked about the transmission parameters, which are represented by A, B, C, D. The equations are given here. So V1 is equal to A times V2 minus BI2 and I1 is CV2 minus DI2. And using that, we found out that the transmission matrix for a network which has a series component of impedance and a shunt component of admittance could be given by this formula, which is 1 plus Z1 Y2, Z1 Y2, and then 1 in the bottom corner. The first term, this is the ABCD matrix. So the first term A is now 1 plus Z1 Y2. And we had defined A as the ratio of V1 divided by V2. V1 is at the input and V2 is at the output. In this particular case, we can call one of the ports as the input and the other as the output because we are specifically talking about transmission parameters. Now, because we have A is equal to V1 over V2 and it is given by 1 plus Z1 Y2, therefore the voltage gain V2 divided by V1 is equal to 1 by 1 plus Z1 Y2. And this is something that we had seen frequently in terms of different filters. You have the RL filter, RC filter. So we'll just quickly go through those. In the first case, we talked about case one, we talked about a high pass filter. And what we said was that if you have the resistor over here and the inductor and the shunt path, then the ratio of V0 by Vi, the V out by Vin, is equal to 1 over 1 plus R by SL. Okay, because R is the resistance and the admittance here is 1 over SL. And this, if you simplify, it becomes S by S plus R over L. Now, if S tends to 0, we saw that this term goes to 0, and therefore the low frequencies are not there. And then if S tends to infinity, then the term becomes 1. And therefore, the high frequencies are passed on to the output. So this is a high pass filter. If I were to invert the positions of R and L, clearly you would expect to find a low pass system. Instead, we took a different case. We kept the R where it was and we replaced the L with a capacitance. Due to that, we were able to show that the admittance of the capacitance is given by SC and the impedance is R as before. Therefore, the ratio of V2 by V1 is equal to 1 by 1 plus S times RC. Right? I'm using the same formula over here. This is the A term and I'm just plugging in Z1 is equal to R and Y2 is equal to 1 over SC, Y2 is equal to SC or 1 over SL as the case may be. And that fetched us a low pass filter in the second case because as S tends to 0, the output is equal to the input. If S tends to infinity, then this term becomes 0 and therefore the high frequencies cannot pass through. We then talked about the ladder network, and a ladder network, this term refers to this special kind of structure where you keep repeating the components. So you can have the same Z1 Y2 over here, then it's repeated, and then there is Z3 Y4 and so forth. So you can just keep adding more and more sections. The beauty of the transmission parameters is that once you calculate the matrix for any one section, then you just have to multiply it with the matrix of the second section to get the output. What I mean is the transmission AB, that means the matrix which represents this section A and section B together. So if the input is Vi and the output is V naught, then I can break this whole structure AB into two sections, A and B. And if I find the transmission matrix for each section, I just have to multiply them to get TAB. Okay. So following the same formula that we had above, the TA matrix is given by 1 plus Z1 Y2, Z1 Y2 and 1. And then for the second part, it's the same structure. It's just 1 plus Z3 Y4, Z3 Y4 and 1. So if I want the ratio of the output to the input voltage, then I would have to do 1 over AB, right? A is the parameter of the ABCD matrix. So the A will then be given by the product of this term and the product of this term, right? I mean, this term multiplied with this term. So that gives me 1 plus Z1 Y2 and in times 1 plus Z3 Y4, and this term and this term give me Z1 Y4. So that's the new matrix. What if Z1 is equal to Z3? That means I'm exactly repeating the same section. If A and B are exactly the same, then what happens to this formula? So if Z1 is equal to Z3 and Y2 is equal to Y4, then what I can show is that the denominator becomes 1 plus Z1 Y2 whole square plus Z1 Y2, right? Nothing new about it. So if you consider the case of the low pass filter, this was the low pass filter. We said that the series element is a resistor, the shunt element is a capacitor. Now, if this is what I'm repeating, so I have the resistor and I have a capacitor. Again, I have the same resistor and then the same capacitor. So if I take two such sections, then by plugging in Z1 is equal to R and Y2 is equal to SC, you get the ratio of output by input is equal to 1 over 1 plus SCR whole square, because that is Z1 Y2, right? Z1 is R and Y2 is SC. So this is that product plus S times RC, which is Z1 Y2. And if I were to simplify that by expanding, this is 1 plus 2 SRC plus R square, S square, R square, C square. Then and divide, if I get R square, C square out common, then I'm left with this expression. Okay. So what is the characteristic of this filter? Well, if S tends to 0, then what will happen? These two terms will vanish, right? If S tends to 0, then I'm left with 1 by R square C square, 1 by R square C square, they'll cancel out each other, I'm left with 1. That means as if I consider low frequencies, limit as S tends to 0, then the output is equal to the input. So this is also a low pass filter, right? Nothing has changed. I took one low pass filter and then I added the same low pass filter again to itself in series. So what is the difference between this and the earlier low pass filter? Any difference? After all, we have got a more complicated expression over here, right? Earlier it was straightforward. It was just 1 plus SRC. Now I have 1 plus SRC square plus SRC and I've got all of this. And at the end of the day, I'm again left with a low pass filter. Because as S tends to infinity, then again this term becomes large and this is gone. And so because the denominator tends to infinity, it becomes 0. So high frequencies are not there, low frequencies. So the important point is, this is a second order filter. The earlier filter, where you had only one capacitor, is called a first order filter. What is the difference between these two? Both are low pass filters, right? So I'll just write it down here. Second order low pass. Now, the first order low pass was just a resistor and a capacitor. Usually the resistor doesn't contribute, always the resistor does not contribute to the order, right? When we use the word order, where did this order come from? It came from the differential equation. So whenever you have differential equations, it means either you have an inductor or a capacitor. So if you have a single inductor, just one inductor over here, or if you have one capacitor, then you will end up with terms like L di by dt or C dv by dt. And because of that, you get the order of the expression. So normally what will happen is, if you have one element like a capacitor, which is an energy storage element, then it'll contribute to one order. If I have two such elements, that means now I have an other resistor and then an other capacitor, then this resistor will not contribute, but the capacitor will create another differential equation, right? So I'm left with C dv by dt dv1, if this is the v1 and this is v2, and say this is vi. So then I'm left with C dV2 by dt. This is the current flowing through this capacitor. This is the current flowing through this capacitor. So every time I get one of these elements with another differential equation, the order keeps increasing. And therefore, this is called a second order system. And that order is reflected as your S square, right? Degree of S. The difference between the second order low pass filter and the first order low pass filter is that here you'll notice that as S becomes large, in the first, so let's write it down explicitly. In the first order low pass filter, you had 1 by 1 plus SRC. Okay. And here, what you notice is that in the first order case, as S increases, this term will start reducing. But for the same value of S, this term will reduce even faster because it's a S square. That means if I were to draw a frequency response, if I take a curve and say this is the V naught by Vi input, okay, and this is the frequency, which I plot as a nu, not a gamma, then what you will notice is that for a low pass system, both of them will have the magnitude equal to 1. But then as you go to higher frequency, then one of them will drop like this and other one may drop like this more sharply. So this would be the first order. This is just a rough sketch, okay? And this would be a second order. So although both are low pass filters, the second order filter will drop more rapidly than the first order filter as frequency increases. So that's the advantage of having a higher order system. So once you have this ladder network, then it's easy. You can just keep, adding more and more of the similar sections and increasing the order of your filter to make the response sharper and sharper. And ideally, if you want the response to be very sharp, you'd have a long ladder circuit. But then what is the disadvantage of that? It's taking space on your integrated circuit chip or wherever you're using it. And in addition to that, there are more problems like ripples and all that, which I have not talked about. So that was the other case of the ladder network. And then finally, we are going to look at the case where I replace the R with an inductor. So earlier I had a R and then I had a capacitor. Now I'm replacing the R with an L. So it's an inductor and a capacitor. In this case, the Z1 is SL and the Y2 is SC. So the value of A is 1 plus Z1 Y2. That's 1 plus S square LC, right? SL into SC. So 1 plus S square LC. And therefore the ratio of output by input, V2 divided by V1, is the inverse of A. That's 1 by A. That's 1 plus 1 over 1 plus S square LC. And see, you notice the same thing. Because the resistor is gone, because there is no resistor and there is only an inductor over here, then this is resulting in a new term, which is, voltage is equal to L di by dt. So you have some differential coming here. The voltage across the capacitor is 1 by say integral I dt. So one differential and one integral. So now you have left with a second order system. So even though I have two elements only, unlike the ladder network where I had two sections, here even with one section I'm getting a second order filter because I have two energy storage devices. I have the inductor and the capacitor. If I had two capacitors, it would not work that way because two capacitors have the same behavior. Both of them are having this, will just add up either in series or parallel, as the case may be. But the inductor and capacitor are opposite types of elements in terms of the how they behave in the differential equation. So you're getting a second order system, and the ratio of V2 by V1 is given by 1 by 1 plus S square LC. So this is also a second order system. So just out of interest, what is the natural response? We solved this for a RL circuit, RC circuit, but we never solved it for an LC circuit. We also solved it for an RLC circuit. So if you remember the equation of the RLC circuit, the series RLC, then you just set R is equal to 0 and you will get your answer. You know what is the answer for a LC circuit. The other way, of course, is you can quickly write it down. So the voltage drop across this L di by dt is the voltage across the inductor. 1 by say integral IDT is the voltage across the capacitor. When we talk about natural response, that means this V1 is not there, right? These two terminals are shorted out. There is no V1. So we are talking about the homogeneous differential equation, which is over here. And we want to measure, say, what is the current through the system. So if you were to now apply the Laplace transform, you will say that I of S into SL, because of the differential here, and 1 over SC is equal to 0. What is the Laplace transform of di by dt? It is S I of S minus I of 0. I am assuming that I of 0 is 0. That means there is no initial current, and now the some disturbance is there in the system, and how is the system responding to it. So this is the equation, and as this is equal to 0 because there is nothing on the RHS, it's a homogeneous equation, we are left with the only possibility that S square plus 1 over LC is 0, or S is given by this formula, right? So what is the solution of such an equation? We have done it several times. So I can directly tell you the answer is sinusoidal. If you wanted to solve it, you would actually put the solutions that I have: a into e power j. So let's call 1 over root of 1 over LC as omega. So then I would call it as, or omega resonant frequency plus b e power minus j omega naught t. This is equal to what? This is I of t. That's what I solved for. And if I know that my initial current is 0, that means I of 0 is 0, then if I solve this equation, then I will say that a plus b is equal to 0, right? Because let me write it for you. So if I of 0 is equal to 0, that is my initial condition, right? This implies, let's write it as implies, a plus b is equal to 0, and that means a is equal to minus b. And if a is equal to minus b, or b is equal to minus a, then I would write this as, this implies I of t is equal to a into sine omega naught t. Okay, a into it is 2 sine omega naught t, but then the 2 can be absorbed into the a because a is just some unknown variable. And similarly, once you solve it, you can get an answer for the expression. But this is basically a sinusoidal waveform. That means if I have a LC circuit, then what will happen is that the if I want a natural response, that means if this terminal is shorted, so it's just one LC circuit that looks like this, then if there is some initial disturbance, it will propagate into the circuit and the current will become a sinusoidal waveform. That means the current never decays. So I'm going to have a current that's always oscillating, right? And what is the frequency of oscillation? The frequency of oscillation is given by this term omega naught, right? Omega naught is 2 pi f. So f is omega divided by 2 pi. So the frequency of oscillation is omega by 2 pi, omega naught by 2 pi. That's 1 by 2 pi root LC. So this is just something you should know because you're working with RL, RC. So it's good to know what LC is. And that's basically a circuit which will oscillate permanently. Is it unstable? No, it's not unstable because the oscillations cannot increase. Remember that these are passive devices. There is no source of energy. So if there is some external energy that got injected into the circuit, then it will keep oscillating. But the oscillation will have a constant amplitude. It cannot increase. It can decrease. When can it decrease? It can decrease if there is a resistance in the circuit. If there is some resistor in the circuit, or this diagram is an ideal diagram, but if there are actually, if you connect an inductor and a capacitor using a wire, then the wires have resistances and the inductor itself is a long winding of wire. So that has its own inherent resistance. So in reality, you may have like a I'll put it as a different color. You will have like an exponential decay, which is sinusoidally oscillating, right? Much like your underdamped system. But if it's a ideal system where there is absolutely no resistance, because resistance causes loss, right? There is always I square R loss through a resistor. So energy is lost whenever current flows through a resistor. But energy is not lost in the inductor or capacitor. So energy is stored in a magnetic field, energy is stored in the electric field. So what's happening with this oscillation is that energy is being switched between the inductor to the capacitor and vice versa, back and forth. Okay. Now, one last set of parameters that we have not discussed is the hybrid parameters, and that is there in your homework assignment. So the hybrid parameters are defined as by this equation. V1 is equal to H11 I1 plus H12 V2, and similarly I2 is equal to H21 I1 plus H22 V2. Now this looks a little counterintuitive because normally you have the dependent variables as voltages in terms of currents or currents in terms of voltages. We also had the case of voltage and current at the input side in terms of values at the output side, because that is transmission. So this hybrid parameters has become popular because it is a convenient way of representing transistor. So let's look at the hybrid parameters first. H11 is V1 divided by I1 when V2 is 0, right? So if V2 is 0, this term is gone and you're left with V1 over I1 is equal to H1. So what is V1 over I1? It's the input impedance. Is H11 the same as Z11? Because Z11 is also input impedance, right? So is H11 the same as Z11? That's the question. Not really, because Z11 was defined as, remember that V1 was Z11 I1 plus Z12 I2. So Z11 was defined as V1 over I1 when I2 was equal to 0. Here I am saying V2 is equal to 0. Earlier I said I2 is equal to 0. So Z11 was called the open, because for I2 is equal to 0 you have to open circuit the output port. So Z11 was called the open circuit input impedance. H11 on the other hand is the short circuit input impedance. Okay? So that's what is written here. H11 is the short circuit input impedance. Similarly, H12 is, okay, since we have left V2 is equal to 0, so let's eliminate this term also. And H21 is given by I2 divided by I1. So H21, I2 by I1 when V2 is 0. That means when you are short circuiting the output side, what is the current gain? So H21 is short circuit forward current gain. What is I2 divided by I1? I1 is going forward and becoming I2. Similarly, now if I put I1 is equal to 0, that means I'm open circuiting the input side. So see, in the input side I'm open circuiting, in the output side I'm short circuiting. So when I open circuit the input side, then I get H12, which is V1 divided by V2, and H22 is I2 divided by V2. V2 divided by I2 is the output impedance. So H22 is I2 divided by V2. That means that's the open circuit output admittance. So H22 will be 1 by Z22, right? Because Z22 was V2 divided by I2 when I1 is 0. And similarly, the H12, which we wrote over here, is V1 divided by V2. So it's called the open circuit reverse voltage gain. Okay, because I1 is 0, so input side is open circuited. But this is again V1 divided by V2, so it's called the open circuit reverse voltage. If I wanted to have an equivalent circuit, then let's this bit up here. If I wanted an equivalent circuit, then I would say that V1 at the input side, not input, V1 at port 1 and V2 at port 2 are characterized as V1 is equal to H11 times I1. See, in this case, the units are also slightly different. So if H11 is V1 divided by I1, that means it's a resistance. Let's use its resistance is in ohms. I mean, its unit is in ohms because it's a resistance. H22's unit is in Siemens because it's a conductance or admittance. The H12 and H21 are dimensionless because they're ratios, right? Ratio. So V1 is I1 times H11. This is ohms into current, it's voltage, plus H12 V2. I have a V2 applied here, and V1 is dependent on V2 through H12. H12 is the dimensionless reverse voltage gain, open circuit reverse voltage gain. So H12 is V1 divided by V2. So V1 divided by V2 into V2, I'm left with V1. So V1 is H11 I1 plus H12 V2. Similarly, on the other side, you have I2 because in this side you have V1 and then the second equation is I2, right? I2 is the dependent variable. I2 is H21 times I1 as given over here, and H21 is the forward current gain in the short circuit condition. So this is represented by a dependent current source. This is a dependent voltage source. So I2 is H21 I1 and plus H22 V2. Since I2 is the sum of two currents, H21 I1 and H22 V2. Since there are two currents, then these two paths have to be in parallel. So there is H21 I1 and H22 times V2. What is H22? The symbol here is a resistor, but remember that H22 is a conductance. So it's actually an inverse of a resistance. So H22 times V2 is equal to a current. So I2 is the sum of these two things in parallel. Whereas the voltage is the sum of two drops in series. This is the H parameter circuit. Let's solve one problem, example problem, very trivial example. So find the H parameters of this circuit, which is a T network having 1 ohms, 6 ohms and 4 ohms. I have the voltage V1 at the input side, V2 at the output side, I1 flowing in at the input, I2 flowing in at the port 2. So if I want H11, what is H11? Short circuit input impedance. What is short circuited? The output side, right? If the input side is short circuited, then it's going to be a problem. So the output side is short circuited and I want to find out what is the input impedance, V1 divided by I1. Isn't that what we wrote here? Yeah, H11 is V1 divided by I1 when V2 is 0. So for V2 0, I'm short circuiting this. If I've short circuited this path, then essentially what happens? This resistor 6 ohms and 4 ohms are in parallel and 1 ohm is in series with them. So the V1 divided by I1 is going to be 1 plus 6 in parallel with 4, right? 6 in parallel with 4 is 6 times 4 is 24 divided by 6 plus 4 is 10, 2.4 plus 1, so I'm left with 3.4 ohms. So H11, which is the short circuit input impedance, is 3.4 ohms. Similarly, if I have short circuited the output side, then I can also calculate short circuit forward current gain, right? I2 is flowing in here, I1 is flowing in here, and I know that the value of I2 is equal to, so if I1 is flowing through the 1 ohm resistor and splitting across these two, then the value of I1 across the 6 ohms is uh, 4 divided by 6 plus 4, right? And since I2 is in the opposite direction as I1, so I2 is minus I1 into 4 by 10, right? That's the current flowing in this path. Therefore, I2 divided by I1 is equal to minus 0.4. So that is H21. Okay, short circuit forward current gain. I2 divided by I1 is minus 0.4. Then now let's eliminate the short circuit because we have to make the other set of measurements. So what is it that we need to do now? We need the open circuit reverse voltage gain, and open circuit output admittance. So for the reverse voltage gain, that means I'm finding out what is the value of V1 in terms of V2. Okay. If V2 is applied over here, then the value of V1, since this is open circuit, remember we are doing H2, H12, open circuit reverse voltage gain. Since this is open circuit, then the voltage drop across the 4 ohms is 4 divided by 4 plus 6, straightforward. So that's what I've written here. V1 is V2 into 4 by 4 plus 6. So V1 by V2 is equal to 0.4. So that is equal to H12. Okay. And then finally I'm left with open circuit admittance. So what is the admittance of this path? Well, the resistance of this path, since this is open circuit, so the only resistance is 6 plus 4 is 10 ohms. So what is the admittance? 1 by 10, that is 0.1 Siemens. So that is H22 over here. So that's it. We found the H parameters of a T network using this formula. So we've got the H11, H21, H12, and H22. The phenomenon of reciprocity that we discussed earlier, we said that reciprocity means that Z12 is equal to Z21, and similarly in the case of admittance, Y12 is equal to Y21, right, in the two-port network parameters. In the case of H12, this is a reciprocal network, right, because there is no active element, it's all passive linear elements, just resistors. And you saw that H21 is equal to minus H12. So that's the condition for reciprocity using H parameters. Why is this the case? You remember what is the reciprocity theorem? If I apply some voltage V1 and I measure current I2 at the output side, this has to be short circuited, remember. This has to be short circuited. And if I apply some voltage in this network and measure a current flowing through this path, and now I reverse the situation. I apply a voltage at this path and I short circuit this path and measure current I1. Then the for the same voltage applied on either side, the same current should develop on the opposite side. Right? That's the thing. And we know that here H21 is I2 divided by I1. H12 is V1 divided by V2, right? And there is a special condition also. H12 is the reverse voltage gain, and H21 is the short circuit forward current gain. So, what you can do from these two expressions is, if I were to say that I2 by I1 into V1 by V2 should be equal to sorry, I should divide them. So I2 by I1 by V1 by V2 is equal to minus 1, right? And from that you can get the ratio of H12 and H21. So that will turn out to be equal to minus 1. Similarly, if you work out, then with the ABCD parameters, you actually get this relationship AC minus BD is equal to 1. We are not working it out, but you should just remember this. So the reciprocity conditions are all four of these. For the H parameters, ABCD transmission parameters, impedance parameters, admittance parameters. So that's basically all with the two-port networks. Just one last thing, since we are continuing from the case of the IC 161 in last semester, this is a common emitter amplifier. Since we said that the H parameters are popular because they are useful for describing the transistors, so I thought we'll just take a quick example of one of these cases. I have the common emitter amplifier. This is the emitter terminal because the arrow is pointing out. There is the input side, which is the base emitter junction, base emitter side. So this is the emitter is common, grounded. I'm applying some voltage at the base, and then similarly there is some biasing at the collector side. If you remember the IV characteristics, we said that if I'm plotting the output characteristics, IC versus VCE, right? Output voltage is VCE and the current is IC. Then normally you expect that these lines should all be flat, but due to early effect, there is some increase in the slope. And each of these lines is plotted for a certain VBE. So if I change the input voltage, I keep increasing the VBE, and I'm plotting the IC as a function of VCE. So there is the active region, the saturation region, etc. We've done all of that. And we know that if I want this to work as an amplifier, I should operate in the active region. We even drew a load line across this and all of that. So if I want to determine, if I want to characterize this transistor, the parameters of importance to us were what? We first characterized the output impedance. We said the output impedance is the change in the collector current, DIC by DVCE, right? VC and IC for a given VBE. So when VB is constant, I find out what is the ratio of IC over VC. So this is basically the inverse slope. So if I change IC by some amount, then for a given VB, VB being fixed, and how much does the VC change? So as VC changes, there is some change in VC and correspondingly some change in IC. So I want to find out what is the change in IC by the change in VC, and that gives me the 1 by R naught, okay? Because I over V is a conductance, and the inverse of the conductance is the resistance. So R naught is the inverse slope of DIC by DVC. The slope over here is Y by X, and that is equal to 1 by R naught. Okay. Similarly, if I wanted to characterize the input impedance of the system, then I would say that we called it R pi. That means if I apply a voltage VBE and there is some current IB flowing in, then R pi is VBE divided by IB. If I wanted the voltage gain of the system, then I would say that the voltage gain AV is given by the output voltage divided by the input voltage. Okay. And that we determined to be something like minus GM RC. Now remember that when we worked with amplifiers, we had two voltages, the capital VBE and the small VBE. The capital VBE was the one that was responsible for biasing the transistor, right? For example, when I say that I'm doing a measurement over here, why am I in this region in the first place? Because I have some DC voltages. I have a capital VBE and a capital and some VCC, which is causing me to be around here. Now at this point, I'm wiggling the input voltage slightly. So I'm making a small AC signal and then I'm seeing how it is amplifying. So the voltage gain was given by the output voltage by the input voltage. So now if I wanted to characterize this in terms of the H parameters, then I could say that this is the base junction, the base terminal, the collector terminal, this is the base emitter and the collector emitter, right? Emitter is common. So it's just one straight line in the bottom. When there is a base current flowing in IB, then what is our H parameter equation? Let's go back to the very top. Yeah. So we are V1 is the input side. V1 is VBE. I2 is IC, right? Collector current, base emitter voltage. Base current, collector emitter voltage. So my H parameters allows me to write this as HIE is the input impedance, which we called as R pi. And this is also what we in our standard terminology called as H11. Okay. Normally you call it H11. In the case of transistors, you use the E for the, if it's a common emitter. If it's a common base transistor, you would put HIB, for example. Then there is the reverse voltage gain, HRE times V2. So just like what we had earlier. So the input is V1 and V1 is IB into H11, which is R pi, and plus HRE times V2. Similarly, at the collector side, the current flowing into the collector is HFE, which is the current gain, times I1, I base, and the output impedance is given as R naught, and HOE is 1 divided by R naught. Okay, so that's the output admittance. So what is HFE? HFE is the forward current gain. That's nothing but beta, right? Because IC is equal to beta IB. So HFE is just beta. I1 is IB, just for clarity, and then I2 is IC. So you can use these equations to easily characterize a transistor. So we know that in a common emitter transistor, for example, the output impedance is quite large, right? In fact, this figure here is very exaggerated because of trying to show the early effect. We know that in reality, this is like going from 0 to say 5 volts, and this is like at minus 50, minus 60 volts, somewhere far away. So the slope is very small actually. These lines are very sharp, and therefore the output resistance is very large. Or in other words, if I want to take DIC by DVCE, that means the change in IC for a change in VC is very small, right? From the output side, you cannot change the collector current much. Therefore, this term 1 by R naught is a very um, small number. So there is a very small output admittance, and therefore usually this extra term can be removed. We actually learnt it in our IC 161, though it was a little confusing, that if I have the amplifier, then I have the output impedance of the amplifier in parallel with the collector resistance, and the collector resistance dominates, and this term can be neglected, etc. So that's where all of this came from. And similarly, on the input side, this reverse voltage gain. I mean, a transistor is an amplifier, right? So the gain of the transistor, voltage gain, should be V2 divided by V1. V2 by V1 is a big number, and HRE is V1 divided by V2. So this is a very small number. Since this is a very small number, usually this can also be neglected. But this is just more informational. It's not a part of your exam. So the idea is that there is some context for these H parameters. The H parameters are very convenient for representing transistor networks. And then of course, for fun, we can do simple problems like this simple T network and find the H parameters. So let's stop here. And I think this concludes our two-port network series sequence. And after this, we'll do a little bit of magnetically coupled circuits to get an idea of how they behave. And then we'll move on to phasors and some more discussions on filters, resonance, and then trying to doing network synthesis. Okay, thank you.